3 years? That was how long the silence had lasted, long enough to feel permanent, long enough to grow teeth and bite into my chest every morning I woke up without her voice in my head. At first, I counted the days, then the months. Eventually, I stopped counting altogether because numbers began to feel cruel. Silence doesn't need counting, it only needs time. Every morning, I still checked the mailbox. I told myself it was habit, nothing more. Just a reflex left over from a life where letters mattered, where handwriting round, slightly slanted, impatient at the edges, meant everything. But habit doesn't make your hands shake. Habit doesn't make your heart lift and fall with every empty metal clang. The mailbox was empty again. I stood there longer than necessary, staring inside as if something might materialize out of pity. The air was cold, sharp against my face, but I welcomed it. Pain on the outside felt easier to manage than the ache inside my chest. She'll write someday, I whispered, not to anyone in particular, maybe to the house, maybe to myself. Inside, the house was quiet in the way only shared spaces become when something important is missing. The walls still held Echo's laughter that no longer belonged to them, footsteps that would never come down the stairs again. Her room was exactly as she'd left it. My wife insisted we keep it that way. She'll come back. She had said back then, her voice calm, certain. You don't erase someone you love. I had believed her. Back then, I believed a lot of things. I moved through the kitchen slowly, pouring coffee I didn't really want. The steam rose, blurring my vision for a moment, and I welcomed that too. Some mornings I imagined what I'd say if my daughter suddenly stood in the doorway, older, changed, maybe angrier. Would I apologize first? Would I ask questions? Or would I just hold her and let the years collapse between us? I never got the chance to find out, until that morning. The knock came softly, almost politely, as if whoever stood on the other side didn't want to disturb the quiet too much. I frowned. We weren't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find the mail carrier already turning away. Mail, he said over his shoulder. I looked down. There it was, an envelope. My breath caught so suddenly it felt like drowning. The world narrowed to that single rectangle of paper resting against the welcome mat. I crouched slowly, afraid that if I moved too fast, it would vanish like all the hope I'd trained myself not to have. My name was written across the front, not typed, written. My fingers hovered over it before touching the paper. The handwriting, there was no mistaking it. The slight pressure on the downstrokes, the way the A leaned just a bit too far to the right. I'd seen that writing on school forms, birthday cards, grocery lists she'd left on the counter. It was hers. After 3 years of silence, my daughter had written to me. A sound escaped my throat, something between a laugh and a sob. Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them, dotting the envelope like rain. I pressed it to my chest, feeling my heart hammer wildly, painfully, wonderfully. She remembered me. I whispered. I stepped inside, closing the door with care, as if the letter were fragile glass. My hands trembled so badly I had to sit down at the table. Every possible emotion collided inside me: joy, fear, guilt, longing. What would she say? Was she angry? Was she okay? Was this forgiveness or goodbye? I didn't care. Anything was better than silence. I slid my finger under the edge of the envelope. Wait. The word cut through the moment like a blade. I looked up. My wife stood in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes fixed on the letter as if it were something dangerous. Not surprised, not relieved, afraid. What's wrong? I asked, confused. My heart was still racing, but now a different feeling crept in. Unease, cold and unfamiliar. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she took a slow step forward and lifted her hand, pointing. Can't you see? She said quietly. See what? I frowned, glancing back at the envelope. My fingers tightened around it protectively. It's from her. It's from our daughter. Her lips parted, then pressed together. For a moment she looked like she wanted to say something else, something bigger, but changed her mind. "Look closer," she said. I lowered my gaze again, irritation flickering through my joy. I studied the envelope more carefully this time. The stamp, the address, the handwriting, then I noticed it, the return address. My breath stuttered. It wasn't wrong exactly, but it wasn't right either. The city was spelled correctly, the street name familiar, but the apartment number, my daughter had never lived there. Not once, not in any version of her life I knew. A chill slid down my spine. That's strange. I murmured. Maybe she moved, maybe. My wife echoed too quickly. I looked up at her again. Her hands were clenched at her sides. Her shoulders were stiff, her breathing shallow. This wasn't relief. This wasn't joy. This wasn't even curiosity. This was fear. Something deep inside me shifted, like a quiet crack forming in glass. It's still from her, I said, more to reassure myself than her. I recognize her writing. I'd know it anywhere. Yes, she said, you would. The way she said it made my stomach twist. I looked back down at the envelope, suddenly aware of how heavy it felt in my hands, how much time was sealed inside it. 3 years of absence, 3 years of unanswered questions, 3 years of wondering whether I had failed her so badly that she'd erased me from her life. I had told myself that silence was her choice. Now, holding this letter, I wasn't so sure. I'm opening it, I said. My wife didn't stop me, but she didn't look away either. And as my finger slipped beneath the flap, tearing the paper open at last, I had the strangest, most unsettling thought of all. What if the silence hadn't been hers? And what if this letter wasn't the beginning of healing, but the end of a lie? The sound of tearing paper was louder than it should have been. It echoed in the quiet kitchen, sharp and final, like something breaking that could never be put back together. My hands trembled as I slid the letter out of the envelope, half expecting my wife to stop me again. She didn't. She stood perfectly still, watching, her eyes tracking every movement as if the paper itself were a threat. The letter was folded neatly, too neatly. My daughter had always been impatient with folding. She used to crease pages carelessly, corners bent, edges uneven. This paper was precise, careful. I told myself it meant nothing. I unfolded it. The words swam for a moment as tears filled my eyes, but I forced myself to focus. The handwriting was hers, there was no denying that. The same loops, the same slight tilt. And yet, as my eyes moved from line to line, a slow, creeping unease replaced the joy that had carried me this far. Asterisk, dear Dad, asterisk, asterisk, I hope you're doing well. Asterisk, my chest tightened. She never wrote like that, not to me, not ever. She used to start letters with asterisk, hey Dad, asterisk, or asterisk, hi Papa, asterisk. Something warm, something familiar. This sounded distant. Polite, like a stranger trying to remember how closeness was supposed to work. I swallowed and kept reading. Asterisk, I've been thinking about the past lately, about everything that happened. I think it's best if we leave things where they are. Some wounds heal better when left untouched. Asterisk, my heart thudded painfully. What does that mean? I whispered. I glanced up at my wife. She was pale now, her mouth set in a thin line, her eyes unreadable. Keep reading, she said softly. I didn't like the way she said it, like she already knew what the words would do to me. I turned back to the letter. Asterisk, please don't try to contact me. I've made peace with my life as it is. I hope you can do the same. Asterisk, the page blurred completely then. I gripped the edge of the table, breathing hard, as if the room had suddenly lost air. Don't try to contact me. After 3 years of silence, this was what she had to say. No, I murmured. This doesn't sound like her. My wife stepped closer. People change, she said. Time does that. Yes, I snapped before I could stop myself, but not like this, not with me. I read the letter again, slower this time. That's when I noticed it. The phrase near the bottom, tucked between sentences like it didn't matter. Asterisk, I forgive you. Asterisk, a cold shiver ran through me. Forgive me for what? I had replayed the past thousands of times in my head, searching for the moment I might have broken something beyond repair. We argued, yes. We misunderstood each other, but abandonment, cruelty, silence, never. She thinks I hurt her, I said hoarsely. She thinks I chose not to reach out. My wife's eyes flickered, just for a second. It was small. Anyone else might have missed it. But after 30 years of marriage, I knew her expressions better than my own. That flicker, sharp, quick, was guilt. I looked back at the envelope again, my fingers tracing the return address, that strange apartment number, that unfamiliar neatness. Then I noticed something else. At the bottom corner of the envelope, nearly invisible unless you knew to look for it, was a tiny mark, a star drawn lightly in pen. My breath caught. She used to draw that star on everything when she was younger. Homework, papers, notes, birthday cards. It was her signature, a habit she never quite grew out of, but she always drew it crooked. This star was perfect. Did you see this? I asked quietly, holding the envelope up. My wife didn't answer right away. That star, I said. She never drew it like that. My wife's lips parted. Then she sighed, as if something heavy had finally settled on her shoulders. You're imagining things, she said. You want it to mean more than it does. No, I said firmly. I want it to make sense. Silence stretched between us. Then I asked the question that had been forming since the moment she told me to wait. Why didn't you want me to open it? Her gaze dropped to the floor. I was trying to protect you, she said. From what? She didn't answer. That was when the memories started to surface. Small, insignificant moments I'd ignored at the time. My letters going unanswered. Calls that never connected. My wife insisting, again and again, asterisk, give her space. She'll come around. Asterisk, how many times had I listened? How many times had I trusted her? Did she ever write before this? I asked slowly. My wife looked up, startled. Of course not. You're sure? Yes. But her voice wasn't steady. Something inside me hardened not into anger yet, but into resolve. The letter in my hands felt less like a message and more like a puzzle, a carefully constructed one. She thinks I abandoned her, I said, and I think someone made sure she believed that. My wife turned away then, crossing her arms tightly, as if bracing herself against a cold wind. You're tired, she said. This is reopening old wounds. No, I replied, this is opening old lies. I folded the letter carefully and slid it back into the envelope. For the first time since it arrived, I wasn't desperate to cling to it. I was determined to understand it. Because silence like that, the 3 years of it, doesn't happen by accident. And as I watched my wife's reflection in the darkened window, avoiding my eyes, one truth settled heavily in my chest. The envelope didn't just carry my daughter's words. It carried a secret someone had worked very hard to keep buried. That night, sleep never came. My wife lay beside me, her back turned, breathing slow and deliberate, the kind of breathing people use when they want you to believe they're asleep. I stared at the ceiling, the letter folded neatly on the nightstand, and its presence louder than any sound in the room. 3 years? 3 years of believing my daughter had chosen silence over me. And now, every memory felt different. I waited until morning, not because I was afraid, but because I needed clarity. Anger would only blur the truth, and I had already lost too much time to confusion. After my wife left for work, I began searching. I told myself I was just looking for reassurance, that I'd find nothing, that I'd feel foolish afterward. But my hands moved with purpose, opening drawers I hadn't touched in years, sorting through stacks of old papers and forgotten envelopes. That's when I found the box. It was tucked behind winter coats in the hall closet, hidden so well it might have been forgotten on purpose. Inside were letters, my letters, unopened, dozens of them. My chest tightened as I picked one up, my handwriting staring back at me like an accusation. Dates stretched across years, birthdays, holidays, ordinary days when I'd written just to say I missed her. She had never seen them. I sank to the floor, the weight of the truth pressing down on me so hard I could barely breathe. She thought I stopped trying. I whispered. Beneath my letters were others' ones I didn't recognize at first. My daughter's handwriting again, less careful this time, more emotional. These were never sent to me. They were responses. Please, questions. Asterisk, why won't you answer? Asterisk, asterisk, what did I do wrong? Asterisk, asterisk, if you don't want me in your life, just say it. Asterisk, my vision blurred as tears fell freely now, splashing onto the paper. Each letter was a wound I hadn't known existed. At the bottom of the box lay a notebook, my wife's. Her handwriting filled the pages, thoughts, fears, rationalizations disguised as love. Asterisk, she's pulling him away from me. Asterisk, asterisk, he listens to her more than anyone. Asterisk, asterisk, I'm protecting our family. Asterisk, protecting. That word again. By the time my wife returned home, I was sitting at the kitchen table, the box open between us like evidence in a trial neither of us could escape. She froze when she saw it. For a long moment neither of us spoke. Then she sighed. I did it for us, she said quietly. For you, I replied, or for yourself. Her eyes filled with tears, but they didn't move me any more. I'd cried enough for both of us. I was afraid, she admitted, afraid of losing you, afraid she'd take you away. She was my daughter, I said. Not my replacement. She didn't need you the way I did. My wife whispered. That was when I understood the depth of it. Not cruelty, not hatred, but fear twisted into control. Love warped into something possessive and destructive. You made her believe I abandoned her, I said. And you made me believe she didn't want me. I never thought it would go this far, she said, breaking down. But it had, and the damage was already done. That evening I wrote a letter of my own, not to confront, not to accuse, but to reach across the silence that had never truly been hers. Asterisk, I never stopped writing. I never stopped loving you. If you're willing, I'm here. Asterisk, I mailed it myself. This time I made sure nothing stood between it and the truth. As I watched the envelope disappear into the slot, I felt something unfamiliar but steady rise within me. Not rage, not revenge, but resolve. Love had buried the truth. Now love would uncover it. And whatever came next, I would face it not as a man deceived, but as a father finally awake. The reply came 2 weeks later. I recognized the handwriting instantly, this time without doubt, without hesitation. The paper inside was creased, imperfect, smudged in places where tears had clearly fallen. I didn't open it at the table. I didn't rush. I stood by the window, sunlight warming my hands, and breathed as if I were preparing to step into a life I'd been locked out of for years. Asterisk, Dad, asterisk, asterisk, I got your letter. I didn't think you'd ever write again. Asterisk, the words cut deep, but they were honest, and honesty was a beginning. She wrote about confusion, about anger, about years spent convincing herself she didn't matter enough to fight for. She wrote about how she'd tried to be strong, how she'd told herself silence was easier than rejection. Asterisk, I don't know what's true anymore. Asterisk, she wrote. Asterisk, but I want to know. Asterisk, so did I. We began slowly, letters first. Then phone calls, hesitant, fragile, full of pauses where the past threatened to break through. And then, one evening, she said the words I'd dreamed of hearing for 3 years. I want to see you. I didn't tell my wife right away, not out of spite, but out of clarity. For once, this wasn't about managing her feelings. It was about honoring my daughters. When the day came, I left the house early, dressed neatly. My heart pounding like it had on the first day I held her as a baby. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our cities. When she walked in, older, thinner, eyes cautious but searching, something inside me broke open and healed all at once. We didn't rush into an embrace. We smiled first, then we cried. Hours passed like minutes. Stories unfolded, hers, then mine. Misunderstandings stacked atop lies. each one placed carefully by hands neither of us had seen at the time. "She told me you didn't want me," my daughter said softly, "that I reminded you of everything you were trying to forget." My jaw tightened, not with anger, but with resolve. "She told me you needed space," I replied, "that reaching out would only push you further away." We sat in silence then, the truth heavy but freeing. When I returned home that night, my wife was waiting. She looked hopeful. "Did you hear back?" she asked. "Yes," I said calmly, "I did." Her shoulders relaxed, and I know everything. The color drained from her face. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse. I laid the letters on the table. My daughter's, mine, the unopened ones she had hidden away. I let the truth speak for itself. "This is your doing," I said, "but I won't punish you the way you punished us." Her tears came fast then, apologies tumbling out, promises following close behind. But control loses its power once it's exposed. The revenge wasn't loud. It was honest. I told our families the truth, not to shame her, but to free myself from the weight of secrecy. I moved into the guest room. I stopped protecting lies that weren't mine to carry. And most importantly, I chose my daughter. Not over my wife, but for myself. Weeks later, I stood in the doorway of a new apartment, helping my daughter unpack boxes. Laughter returned, hesitant at first, then real. Healing didn't erase the past, but it softened its edges. One evening, as we sat together, she looked at me and smiled. "You didn't give up on me," she said. "Never," I replied. "I just had to find my way back. Some revenge tastes bitter. This one tasted like truth." And justice didn't come in the form of punishment, but in the quiet, undeniable victory of love reclaimed.